Now, when we talk about elasticity concepts, we are using back the same principles, using back the same diagrams as we did in demand supply, just that we are adding more ingredients into the analysis. So over here, we first bring in the concept of the price elasticity of demand. Refer to this as PED in short. So the definition here is that PED measures the responsiveness, the degree of responsiveness of quantity demanded to a change in price of the good itself. Basically, we looked at demand as saying that whenever there's a change in price, it causes a change in the quantity demanded of that product. So now the next question here in this chapter is how much does it affect? So we are talking in percentage terms. So you can see here that there's actually a formula to calculate the PED value. So we remember this as the percentage change in the quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in the price. So for example, there is a 5% increase in the price of cigarettes. So could that cause a more than 5% decrease in the quantity demanded? Or would that cause a less than 5% decrease in the quantity demanded of cigarettes? So there's a higher price, and how much does the quantity demanded actually decrease by? So we are not just concerned about the direction of change, but also the extent, how much. So this is where PED is used. Now, when we talk about PED, whenever we calculate it in a formula, we say that the values will always be negative. Now think about it. If the prices go up, the quantity will go down. So this is a negative value. If the prices were to reduce, the quantity demanded would go up instead. So this will also give us a negative answer. So then, because the answer is always negative, we will tend to ignore the negative sign, which means that in our analysis, we are only going to focus on the specific number that we derive from the calculation. So how does it work? So suppose here, we say that there's a price increase from 50 cents to $1. So this is the first piece of information. Then we have the quantity demanded decreasing from 800 units to 700 units as a result. So in this case, we will calculate both the percentage change in quantity demanded, which is 12.5%, and the change in price, which is 100%. So then when we put into the formula, 12.5 divided by 100, this will give us 0.125. Now, this 0.125 is what we are using for our analysis. Bear in mind that we just mentioned that there's always a negative sign in front of the calculation of the answer, but we are going to ignore this because it doesn't give us any information since it always is negative. So with this 0.15, how can we describe the nature of the demand for this product? We say that it is considered as a price inelastic demand. So price inelastic demand, you will see that the PED value is less than 1. So previously, we see here it is 0.125. So 0.125 in absolute terms is less than 1. So when it's less than 1, it means that a change in price causes a small change in the quantity demanded. So we use the word small here first. So it causes a small change in the quantity demanded. So in the case of cigarettes, for example, when there's an increase in price, we tend to observe that there's a smaller change in the quantity demanded because one reason is it is addictive in nature. So it's harder to kick off the habit. Even if it's more expensive, people tend to buy almost the same quantity. They may redirect their resources, their money, from purchasing other items to continue buying cigarettes. So here, the change in quantity is minimal. On the other hand, we may also have a PED more than 1. This here means that the demand is price elastic. So a price elastic demand, that means with the same percentage change in price, let's say also 5%, you get a bigger change in the quantity demanded. Suppose today the price of blue pens goes from 50 cents to $3, and every color every other colored pen remains the same price at 50 cents. So only blue pens are more expensive at $3, whereas if you are buying black pens, red pens, or other colors, they remain at 50 cents. So then, because consumers can choose from the other colors, from the other substitutes, they are very likely to reduce the consumption of blue pens drastically or in fact totally, and this will cause a big change in the quantity consumed of the blue pens. So then it will be a price elastic demand. Now, if we were to show this on a diagram, as we can see here, these are the possible ways that we can draw the demand curve. So previously we drew it as a 45-degree downward sloping demand curve. And right now, given that we are including the analysis of elasticity inside our inside our analysis, then we are going to tilt, or we're going to adjust the slope of your demand curve. Now, bear in mind here that the gradient isn't the same as the PED, but we'll come to that later. But in terms of the gradient, this will help us to understand the relative changes in price and quantity. So the commonly used cases are 2 and 4. We have price inelastic demand and also price elastic demand. Now, price inelastic demand, you can see here that the changes in price, the change in price is actually much bigger compared to the change in the quantity. So with a very steep demand curve, the change in demand, the change in price causes a small change in the quantity. Whereas if you have a price elastic demand, then a small change in the price causes the quantity to change by a larger extent. So this will be the two common cases. Now, at the same time, we may also have other situations where you have perfectly price inelastic demand. This is case number 1, where the quantity remains the same whatever the price is. So this could be the case of medication. So the doctor prescribes a specific quantity of, let's say, antibiotics for the patient to consume. So whichever price that they charge at, the consumers or the patients are assumed to just buy to accept the doctor's prescription. So they will just buy the quantity. So the price doesn't actually affect the quantity itself. At the same time, the patient is unlikely to consume more than the prescription. So they wouldn't eat more antibiotics than the ones prescribed. They probably wouldn't eat less because the doctor's advice is to finish the whole course to get well. So they will just stick to that 10 pills, for example. So regardless of the price, the quantity remains the same at the quantity. So then you have a case of a perfectly price inelastic demand. Now, in the other extreme case, we have a perfectly price elastic demand. Now, when we throw in the word perfectly, it means to 100%, it means completely, it means totally. So here, in the first case, we have perfectly priced inelastic demand. This is where the quantity doesn't change at all, even if the price changes. Whereas in the case of a perfectly priced elastic demand, this will be the case where a small change in price causes a very large, or in fact infinite change in the quantity consumed. So this could be the case where consumers have many substitutes to choose from. So for example, in the market for potatoes, so potatoes are seen as identical. Wherever you buy the potatoes, they are they are thought to be the same, identical. So then, if you have so many options, so many places to buy potatoes from, if a specific supermarket charges a much higher price, then consumers are likely to switch to alternatives. They will buy from some other stalls. Of course, here the assumption is that they are aware of this one particular supermarket's adjustment in the price, and they make the necessary adjustments in their behavior. So, of course, in the real world, people may just find the nearest the nearest supermarket to buy from, and they may not just buy from specific stores just because of the change differences in the price. But here we have the various situations. Okay, so perfectly priced inelastic demand, where the quantity doesn't change at all, even if the price changes. perfectly priced elastic demand, where a small change in price causes a very big or infinite change in quantity, where everyone stops buying from that shop or everyone starts buying from that shop, right? To a very large extent. Then in the more commonly seen cases, we have price inelastic, where a bigger change in price causes a small change in quantity, and you have a price elastic demand, where that small change in price causes a very big change in the quantity demanded, but not to the extreme end of infinite, but relatively larger percentage change. Now, what actually affects or determines the PD value of a product? Right, so how do we know whether to draw it as a gentle demand curve or as a steep demand curve? Right, so here we have a list of the factors that will determine the PD values of specific products. So things like the availability and the closeness of the substitutes. So if a specific product has many substitutes available, then the consumers tend to be more responsive to the price changes. So if we, let's say we want to eat a dessert, right? So we want some snacks or we want some dessert after our meal, and we have many options to choose from. We can have ice cream, we can have the Korean bingsu, we can have the Chinese chendol, and so on. So out of all these options, right? Suppose now the price of one of them is actually higher, then consumers are quite likely to switch to other products because they don't want to pay much more for that one item, for that specific item. So the degree of responsiveness towards the higher price is going to be larger. They are more sensitive to the price change, and they will switch over. So this will make the demand for that product more price elastic. Conversely, if there's no substitute, so suppose today the price of water goes up, right? And the consumers look at the increase in price, and they are unable to reduce their consumption drastically because water has no substitute. So if I want to shower, if I want to wash something, then I have to use water. I cannot use fruit juice. I cannot use soft drinks for that purpose, right? So in terms of the substitutes, the availability, this is something that affects the PD value. Then in terms of closeness, right, how similar are they? So if we want to write something, we can use a blue pen, we can use a red pen. So both are very close substitutes. The only difference is, of course, probably just the color. So if I would just want to scribble something, and it doesn't matter for me which color of pen that I use, then suppose today blue pens are more expensive, then consumers are likely to switch over to black pens, to red pens more readily because they want to avoid paying that higher price, right? So they are more responsive, they are more sensitive to the higher price. Another factor would be the degree of necessity, right? So how much of a necessity is this product? So if we compare between water, electricity, and a luxury bag, right? So water, electricity, these two items, they are considered as necessity goods because we need them in our daily lives, right? So if we don't drink water, we will be very thirsty. We could die. If we don't have electricity, it's a very huge inconvenience because we cannot do anything at night when it's super dark, right? So these are necessity goods that you can't do without. On the other hand, let's say for branded bag, right? You may crave that bag a lot, but if you don't have that, you probably wouldn't die. All right, so the degree of necessity is lower for that luxury item compared to the necessity products. So then, when you need an item much more, you are less responsive, less sensitive to the price changes. Because even if the prices go up, you have no choice but to continue consuming, right? You cannot say no to water, you can't say no to electricity, right? Because it's something that we really need to live our daily lives. And also another factor would be the proportion of the income. So looking at your amount of looking at the income that you are earning, your nominal income, and we look at the price of that item, what is the proportion of the income that you are spending on that item? So if we compare a pen and a car, between these two items, a pen here could cost $1, a car could cost $70,000, $80,000. So if you compare them against your income level, a pen is going to take up a very small proportion of your income, right? So in that case, even if pens go get more expensive, we probably wouldn't care as much. We may grumble, but we continue to buy, because it's such a small proportion of our income, right? The increase is also smaller in terms of cents and so on. But if you look at the car, increasing by the same percentage, right? Let's say $70,000, even if it increases just by 10%, it's a $77,000 increase. So it's a very big proportion of your income. It takes up such a big proportion that consumers are more sensitive to the price changes. So they are more likely to think longer. They are more likely to deliberate for more before they commit to that decision, right? And if, of course, today the price of the cars drop by the same percentage as the pen, then consumers are more likely to buy, to take action compared to in the case of pen, right? Because for pen, the change is just in terms of cents. But for the cars, the same 10%, 20% change could be in terms of thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars. So the difference here is bigger. Consumers will be more sensitive in terms of the price change in cars. So then the demand for cars will be more price elastic compared to the demand for pen, which is more price inelastic. Okay, so to sum up again, we have these various these various PED diagrams, right? And we say that for the PED values, they could range from 0 to infinity, right? So this is what we have gone through just now. So if you have perfectly priced inelastic demand where there is no change in the quantity at all, the PED value is 0. So all this here can be derived using the formula that we went through previously, right, earlier on. So you could have a case of PED goes to 0, then later on it will be less than 1, right? So you have a bit of a price inelastic situation. There will be a small change in quantity whenever the price change, but this is still quite small, right? And then after that, from less than 1, it goes on to more than 1. So in the case of PD more than 1, this is where the percentage change in the quantity and price are by the same number, right? So 5% change in price causes a 5% change in quantity demanded. So I would say this is quite rare, because if you want to find a PD value that's exactly 1, then the probably is going to be very small, right? Chances are the products would fall into the other categories, mostly more than 1 or less than 1. Again, more than 1, less than 1, these are in terms of the absolute value. We are not including, or we are not factoring in the negative sign, right? So the negative sign when you calculate is already being discounted, is being ignored. All right. So we also have price elastic demand, PED more than 1, where the change in price causes a much bigger change, or we say here a more than proportionate change in the quantity demanded. So that would be price PED more than 1. Now, of course, the last case is where a small change in price causes an infinite change in the quantity demanded. That means everyone starts to buy from you, or everyone stops buying from you. So that's a very, very drastic change, right? So here, PD value would take on an infinite value. Now, we come on to the next part on the application of the PED concepts, right? So we learned about PED and we want to see how it is used in our analysis. So one way in which it can be used is in terms of the changes in the total revenue of the firms, right? So firms are concerned with profit maximizing. They want to maximize the profits. So if they can make use of PED concept to increase the total revenue, then it helps them in that regard, right? So how do we make use of this? So first of all, we want to see whether this item has a price elastic or price inelastic demand. So suppose now we have the case of a price elastic demand. So this is where the demand curve is more gently sloped, right, as you see in the diagram. So here, for example, the case of value dollar shop, right? So value dollar shop sells items that can also be bought elsewhere, right? But they are superior in the sense that they charge very low prices, right? So if you want to buy washing powder, if you want to buy shampoo, assuming this person is not brand conscious or they are just looking for something cheap, then they would likely turn to value dollar shop, right? Because that shop offers like the cheapest, if not the cheapest price available in the market. So because there are many substitutes for the items sold, consumers will be very price sensitive. They will look for the cheapest because if I don't buy it from you here, I can buy it from some other shops, right? So we are looking for which shop sells it at the lowest price. So once you reduce the price, assume now, assume now that we started from P1 and the quantity demanded was Q1. So once we reduce the price to P2, the quantity demanded will increase to Q2. And you realize here that the drop in price is a smaller percentage or a smaller distance, right, as compared to the increase in the quantity. Okay, so a small change in price leads to a bigger change in the quantity, right, in layman's term. So what happens to the total revenue here? Now we see two colors they are being shaded, the green one and the beige one. So initially, the total revenue earned by the firms, how we find the total revenue, we use P1 multiplied by Q1. So the area here, P1 and Q1, this would represent the initial total revenue, right? So this is how much you earn from selling the products. Now, once you reduce your price, we reduce the prices from P1 to P2, then we see a bigger increase in our quantity from Q1 to Q2, right? So the green area is the loss in your total revenue when you reduce your price. So you can see here, because we reduced the price, previously we were earning that green area and we no longer are earning that green area, right? Why do we say that? Because the new revenue is now P2 multiplied by Q2. So it will be the area here instead, if you are following the movement of the mouse, right, of the cursor. So it will be P2 multiplied by Q2. So the green area was a revenue for the firms previously. Now it no longer is, right? So you have lost that green area. But at the same time, we previously didn't have the beige area, but we do have it now, because now we are increasing the quantity and we are able to earn that beige area. So we lose the green one and we gain the beige one, right? So the green and the beige. So when we compare both, we realize that the beige is a bigger area. So in terms of revenue, it's a bigger increase, right? So think about it. You reduce your price just a bit and many more customers now buy from your business. So for the firms, they are going to see a bigger increase in the revenue compared to that smaller decrease in the revenue. So overall, if the demand is price elastic, if the consumers are very mindful of a lower price, then it makes sense for the firm to reduce their price to attract more customers, right? So in that case, the total revenue actually goes up when the price is reduced. Okay, now conversely, if the item here has a price inelastic demand, that means whenever you change the price, the consumers are hardly responsive. So this could be the case with cigarettes. So when we increase the price of cigarettes, such as because of the government's taxation or because the firms want to increase the price to gain more profits, then consumers are only going to reduce the consumption minimally. They are not going to reduce it drastically because they are addicted to that product. So then, as we see here, the increase in price from P1 to P2 causes the quantity to fall from Q1 to Q2. So again, the two areas are shaded. So you have the beige and the green. Initially, we had Q1, P1. So this area here was our previous total revenue, right? So area P1, Q1 represented our previous revenue. So now that we have increased the price and reduced the quantity, the green area is that part of the revenue that we lost, because you no longer are selling at the lower price. So the green area is now lost. But at the same time, because you charge a much higher price now, consumers will come to you, and then you get the beige area as your new revenue. So the new revenue is now P2 multiplied by Q2, which is inclusive of that beige area. So again, the gain in revenue is higher, is larger than the loss in the revenue. So the beige area will outweigh the green one. And in this scenario, the firm increases the price and it pushes up the profits, or it pushes up the revenue. So the firm is earning more revenue by pushing up the price. So you can see here where we know the elasticity, the price elastic nature of the product, right? In terms of the PD value, is it more than one or less than one? Is it price elastic or price inelastic demand? Then we are able to use it to derive the pricing strategy and also to adjust our total revenue. Okay, so at this point, you may be thinking that this is not entirely true. There could be some limitations to this application, right? But for now, we are not delving into that. We are simply just explaining what the concept is as it is, right? So this is what the concept, what the theory holds. Whether in real life we are using it this way or is it entirely useful, that is for another video to discuss. Okay, so this is what the concept here. Now, the last concept for this video has to do with the supply side. So we are talking about the PES, or the price elasticity of supply, right? So similar to PED, in terms of definition, this concept here measures the responsiveness of quantity supplied to a price change. So from the perspective of the suppliers, whenever you have a price change, are they responsive enough to increase the quantity supplied drastically, or would that be a minimal change or minimal increase, right? So how ready, how responsive are producers to the change in the price in the market? Okay, so similarly, you have a formula. So we use the percentage change in the quantity supply of the product divided by the percentage change in the price, right? So in this case here, however you calculate the value, the answer will always be positive, right? Because the price and the quantity supply of a product they have a positive relationship, right? So higher price leads to higher quantity supply and vice versa. So again, with PED, we will ignore the negative sign. With PES, we are just going to ignore the positive sign as well. So the sign actually doesn't give us any information, right? It is just always the same. So then we talk about the various PES values. So these two are the common situations, right? You can see that it is also similar to how we can adjust the gradient of the demand curve. So if you make it steeper, right, like the first diagram, then we say that supply here is more price inelastic, right? So with the change in price, right, there's only a small change, or formally we call this a less than proportionate change in the quantity supplied, right? So in the first diagram, in this case, the producers are not able to sell much more readily. Okay, so we'll look at the reasons why later, but for now, we'll say that they are not able, or they are not selling readily, even if there's an increase in price. Even if there's more profits to be made, they are not just increasing the quantity supplied readily. On the other hand, right, for the second diagram, with the same percentage increase in price, right, as the first diagram, you see that there's a much bigger change in the quantity supply. So in the second diagram, we say that the producers are more responsive to price changes, or here responsive to price increase. That means there's a bigger change in the quantity supply. So there's a bigger change in terms of how many units that the suppliers are selling. Okay, so here price inelastic supply, PS value less than 1, PES value less than 1, price elastic supply, PES value more than 1. These are the common situations that we face, right? So the other three scenarios with perfectly price elastic, perfectly price inelastic, and also unelastic supply, these are more of the extreme ends, which we will not cover. So we are just focusing on these two in our analysis, right? So again here, what we are seeing is whenever you have a change in supply or a change in price, how ready are the producers going to react, right? Are they going to sell much more or just a bit more? Okay, so what are the factors that affect the PES value or that determine the PES value? So the first one, we have the stockability and the production time, right? So we ask the producers, or we ask the producers will see whether the products can actually be stored. So if you compare between fresh food and furniture, right? Fresh food cannot be stored for long because it will go bad. Whereas for furniture, it can be stored for a longer time. So if today the price of fresh food and the price of furniture increases, both increase by the same percentage, then the furniture sellers are able to start selling much more because they can just take out from the inventory and start selling. So they already have a huge a huge quantity of products that were already stocked and ready for selling. On the other hand, fresh food, you cannot be storing a lot. They probably wouldn't be storing a lot because these items go bad fast, right? So we always need to be constantly getting the new ones. So that makes the suppliers less ready to start selling. On the other hand, we have the production time. So production time will be in terms of how long it takes to produce these items. So for example, let's say we look at the wages, right? So far we've been talking about the supply of uh, traditional goods and services. So let's say now we look at the case of a worker, right, as a resource. Okay, so we contrast between two situations. We have a skilled worker and an unskilled worker, right? So in terms of the skilled worker, it takes a longer time for them to learn the skills, right? Such as doctors, accountants, lawyers. So it takes many years for them to go through the education system to learn the different things and then to apply them in the workplace, right? So then, if the wages of these professions increase, are we able to see many more of such professionals suddenly coming out to apply for the jobs? Probably not, right? Because if you have to look at production time as a factor, it takes many years to train these people, these professionals. So even if the wages go up now, we wouldn't see a lot more of these workers coming in a short period of time because they are not going to be trained in a short period of time, right? In contrast, if you look at the unskilled workers, um, they are able to work right without much specialized skills. Then if the wages go up, we are able to see many more of these workers coming into the labor market because they will be willing to earn the money, right? So then you have a difference in terms of the readiness, the responsiveness of the supply of the producers. Okay, then we look at whether you have spare capacity, for example. So if the firm has many idle resources, right? So idle means that it's not doing anything. Let's say now during COVID, right? And then many workers were told to stay at home. They cannot be all coming in at the same time. Suppose now it is suddenly lifted, right? And the workers are now all very free. Okay, they were very free and they are now all available. So if the price of the output of the product is now much higher, then the workers can suddenly all be put to production because they are all already available to produce the items, right? In contrast, if the factory is already at maximum capacity, if they were to still accept new orders from the customers, then this will have to be on the waiting list, right? So you have to wait for the current production to be done before we start the next batch of production. So in that case, it's going to take a longer time, and it will make the producers, the firms, less ready to sell, even if there is an increase in the price of the product.